On a cold night in Glasgow's south side, red traffic lights cast a glow on wet pavement. The date is the 15th of November 2016, just another late Tuesday, until suddenly it becomes anything but ordinary. In a black Audi RS4 idling at the light sits 26-year-old Euan Johnston, a father of two. He's on the phone with his partner, assuring her he'll be home soon. In the passenger seat is his best friend, Brian, fresh off a lad's dinner at a local restaurant. The city around them is quiet. It's nearly midnight. Neither man notices a dark SUV creeping up alongside. In a split second, the mundane scene shatters. Flash, bang, 3 gunshots exploded from the neighbouring vehicle. Brian flinches as pops ring out. He turns and is met with a harrowing sight. Euan's head slumps forward, blood streaming. A bullet has torn through his skull. "Euan! Euan!" he screams, voice cracking. But his friend doesn't respond. On the phone, Euan's partner hears revving, then a deafening bang. Then Brian screams of panic and anguish. She cries out, asking, "What happened?" But there's only chaos on the other end. The attacker's vehicle, a dark Audi Q5, squeals away into the night, tyres screeching, leaving shocked witnesses and shell casings in its wake. Within minutes, police swarm the junction of Shields Road and Scotland Street. Bystanders who moments ago were out walking now cower behind cordons, giving statements with shaky voices. They just saw a man executed in front of them. Paramedics work frantically on Euan, whose pulse is faint. They rush him to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, but his wounds are catastrophic. At 2:50 AM, doctors pronounce Euan Johnston dead. What had been a regular weeknight in Glasgow has now turned into a gangland murder scene. Detectives immediately sense this is no random drive-by. The cold precision, an Audi pulling up, an assassin firing point blank then fleeing, has all the hallmarks of a targeted hit. The Glasgow Underworld has been violent in recent years, and whispers spread that Euan might have been living on borrowed time. At a dawn press briefing, Detective Superintendent Jim Kerr doesn't sugarcoat his words. This was obviously a targeted attack, a shocking incident that no one should have to witness, he says. Indeed, it was as if the hitman didn't care that it was a public street, an execution in full view of anyone around. As Glasgow awakes to the news, police launch a major investigation. Operation Trahera, as the case is codenamed, goes into overdrive. Forensic teams scour the intersection, recovering shell casings and swabbing for any DNA. They note the tight grouping of shots. The killer was a practiced hand. Meanwhile, other officers canvass CCTV cameras in the area. It doesn't take long to find critical footage. A black Audi Q5 SUV was captured speeding away from the scene moments after the murder. Additional CCTV clips show what appears to be the same Q5 tailing Euan's car earlier that night. This wasn't a road rage or spontaneous crime. Someone hunted Euan Johnston down. Within hours, a breakthrough comes from Glasgow's north side. A report comes in of an Audi Q5 found torched on a quiet residential street, Bracken Street, in the Parkhouse area. Police converge and confirm the worst kept secret in town. It's the getaway car. The SUV is completely destroyed by fire, clearly an attempt by the killers to erase evidence. But detectives are determined. They carefully sift through the sooty shell of the Q5. In the back seat, they discover a half-burned piece of cloth. It's the remnants of a hooded jacket, melted and blackened, perhaps left by one of the gunmen. Forensic scientists bag it, hoping something useful survived the flames. As the days pass, Euan's murder dominates Scottish news headlines, not just because of its brutality, but because speculation swirls that Euan himself was not innocent. In fact, it's soon reported that at the time of his death, Euan Johnston was awaiting trial in the High Court on a major heroin trafficking charge, £640,000 worth of heroin to be exact. This revelation sends a jolt through the community. Was Euan killed as a form of underworld justice or to silence him before his own trial? Police won't officially comment on motive, but they do make a public plea. Don't let speculation about Euan's criminal ties stop you from helping us find his killers. It's a delicate situation, asking potential informants to trust the police in a world where snitches get stitches. 1 week after the murder, detectives returned to the scene on the 22nd and 23rd of November. They set up checkpoints, hoping to jog memories. Officers hand out flyers in multiple languages, mindful of Glasgow's diverse communities. They ask, did you see a black Audi Q5 that night? Did you see any suspicious men around Scotland Street? The response is underwhelming. Few new witnesses come forward. The silence is deafening, but perhaps not surprising. People are terrified to get involved when gangland executions happen. Euan's nickname, EJ, and his known reputation might be keeping some lips sealed. Behind the scenes, however, the police are piecing together more of the puzzle. Ballistic tests confirm the same gun fired all 3 recovered bullets, a semi-automatic pistol, likely a rare model in the UK Underworld, perhaps a reactivated antique or smuggled weapon. They suspect the shooter used a silencer, as some witnesses reported hearing muffled pops. They also traced the Audi Q5's history. It turns out to have been stolen from a fitness club parking lot in May 2016 and given a fake plate. In other words, the killers prepared this vehicle well in advance, a sign of meticulous planning. Then, a key revelation. From CCTV and neighbourhood inquiries, detectives map out the getaway route. After the murder, the Audi Q5 didn't just vanish, it drove a specific path across the Kingston Bridge, leaving central Glasgow, then north through Springburn and onwards to the outskirts where Park House is located. Why is this important? It suggests the perpetrators had a plan to escape the city centre quickly, and perhaps a secondary vehicle waiting. Indeed, on a tip, police learned that around midnight, residents near Balmore Road, close to where the Q5 was burnt, saw 3 men running away and a dark Volkswagen Golf speeding off shortly after. This likely was the backup getaway car carrying the shooters to safety after ditching the Q5. 3 men, 2 cars, stolen plates and a torched vehicle. This was the work of a professional hit squad. Winter 2016 turns to 2017. Months go by without an arrest. To outsiders, it might look like the case is going cold, but in the labs of Police Scotland, evidence is speaking. The burnt hooded jacket from the Q5 has been painstakingly examined. Despite the fire, forensic experts managed to extract a tiny sample of DNA, perhaps sweat or skin cells from the collar or zipper. By spring 2017, they get a match. Bingo! The DNA belongs to a known individual, David Scott, aged 33. Police are well acquainted with Scott. He's a local thug with a record of violent offences and weapon possession. Could he be the triggerman who executed Euan Johnston? Investigators dig into David Scott's recent activities. Does he have an alibi for the night of the 15th of November 2016? Is he tied to any gang that had a beef with Euan? They keep it quiet but start monitoring him. Over the following weeks, evidence and intelligence build up. By July 2017, authorities are ready to move. In coordinated raids, they arrest David Scott and another man, Anthony Tony Ruthven, for Euan's murder. Ruthven, 32, is a lesser known figure, but rumoured to have underworld connections as well. Both men are charged and hauled before a sheriff court. The hearing is procedural. Scott and Ruthven say nothing and the judge orders them held in custody. After 8 long months, police have finally caught up to at least one suspect. News media labelled David Scott the suspected hitman in a gangland feud. Fast forward to spring 2018, the High Court trial for Euan Johnston's murder is set to begin. Prosecutors have built a case portraying David Scott as the gunman who pulled the trigger and Anthony Ruthven as an accomplice in the plot. In late April, the trial opens in Glasgow's imposing courtrooms. The list of witnesses is lengthy. Over the next 2 weeks, jurors are immersed in the bloody details of that night. They hear from Brian McMahon, who still bears the emotional scars of witnessing his friend's murder. Brian testifies that 1 second he and Euan were laughing about something that happened at dinner, and the next It was just bangs and glass everywhere. He recalls the horror of seeing Euan shot and trying in vain to help him. The courtroom falls silent as a recording of the 999 call is played, with Brian's distraught voice in the background. Danielle Carruthers also takes the stand, fighting through tears as she recounts the phone call. She describes how Euan's voice just vanished mid-sentence, replaced by revving, a loud crack, and her own desperate shouts of his name. Jurors see how the violence of that night tore through ordinary lives. Danielle says her young child still asks for their daddy. The prosecution's narrative is clear. This was a premeditated assassination. They show grainy CCTV footage, Euan's black Audi leaving the Red Pepper restaurant, and not far behind, a dark Audi Q5 following at a distance. Another clip shows the moment the Q5 pulls level with Euan's car at the fateful intersection, though the shooting itself happens off camera. It's stark and strike, the prosecutor argues. Alex Prentice, QC, dubs it a well-planned execution of a man marked for death. Then comes the forensic bombshell. An expert from the Scottish Crime Lab testifies how they recovered a charred Nike windrunner jacket from the burned Q5. Despite severe fire damage, they painstakingly extracted DNA. When she announces the match, David Scott's DNA, all eyes turn to the accused man in the dock. David Scott, stocky and stone-faced, clenches his jaw but betrays little emotion. It's a direct link placing him in that Q5 that night. The odds of the DNA belonging to someone else are astronomically low. In the gallery, Euan's family members exchange hopeful glances. The evidence seems strong. However, trials can take unpredictable turns. In this case, the twist comes when the spotlight shifts to Anthony Ruthven, the co-accused. The Crown had alleged Ruthven was in on the hit, perhaps even in the Audi that night. They introduce evidence that in December 2016, a witness named David Callender told police he heard Ruthven confess to the murder at a party. According to that statement, Ruthven supposedly bragged about being the triggerman, saying, "Bang, I nipped that EJ. We pulled up at the lights and I shot him. I was sitting in the back passenger seat and I put the window down and done him." If true, that's a stunning confession. But when Callender testifies, things implode. Nervous and contradictory, he completely recants his story. He claims he has learning difficulties. He didn't understand the police and that they were telling me what to say. Gasps ripple through the courtroom. The Crown's key evidence against Ruthven just evaporated. After this debacle, Prosecutor Prentice makes a dramatic announcement. The Crown is withdrawing all charges against Anthony Ruthven. In open court, Lady Stacey looks at the bewildered Ruthven and tells him he is free to go, formally acquitted. He steps out of the dock, a free man, as murmurs fill the room. It's an anticlimactic end for the case against Ruthven, and it leaves David Scott solely in the crosshairs. The trial proceeds with only Scott as the defendant. Ruthven's release might have cast some doubt, but the core evidence against Scott remains untouched. The defence scrambles to exploit Ruthven's acquittal, hinting that maybe the wrong man is on trial. But with DNA, CCTV and eyewitnesses pointing to Scott, there's only so much the defence can do. Scott himself does not testify, which is his right. Perhaps it's a calculated move. Cross-examination could have been brutal for him. Finally, in May 2018, after roughly 2 weeks of testimony, the jury delivered its verdict. Guilty of murder. David Scott is convicted, and he stands impassively as the decision is read. For Euan's family, seated in the public gallery, it's a moment of justice tinged with sorrow. Euan is still gone, but at least someone is being held accountable. During sentencing, Lady Stacey addresses Scott with an air of disgust. She calls the murder a premeditated, cold-blooded assassination and an act of cowardice, shooting an unsuspecting man trapped in his car. She emphasises how public and brazen the killing was, endangering bystanders on a busy city street, and she points out Scott's record. He's a man who has shown a propensity for violence. For all these reasons, she says he must face the full forces of the law. Lady Stacey then sentences David Scott to life in prison with a minimum term of 22 years to be served. This means Scott won't be eligible for parole until at least 2040. He's led away in handcuffs, emotionless, as if resigned to his fate. Outside the court, police officials make statements praising the verdict. This was a pre-planned, cold-blooded murder of a young man in the middle of a busy area, DS Jim Kerr tells reporters. It was cowardly and unacceptable, and we welcome the conviction of David Scott. He reminds the public that illegal firearms and organised crime violence will be relentlessly pursued by law enforcement. Euan's family does not speak to the press on this day. They have been through an emotional wringer, but one can imagine the mix of relief and grief on their faces. Justice was served, but only partially. There's an unspoken truth. Others involved in Euan's murder have gotten away. The driver of the Audi Q5, the man who torched the car, the person who provided the gun. None of them have faced justice, at least not yet. David Scott from behind bars launched an appeal in 2019, but it went nowhere. The appeals court dismissed his claim and upheld the conviction decisively. Scott will sit in prison for a long time to come, but he has never cooperated with authorities about the others involved. And so the case isn't truly over. Police kept the file open, quietly chasing leads on Scott's accomplices. Every so often, an appeal to the public is renewed, as was the case in 2025, when detectives got a tip about the possible location of the murder weapon. In a dramatic twist, nearly 9 years after the crime, officers descended on the town of Oban on Scotland's west coast, scouring a grassy embankment near an old quarry. The search lasted days, involving diggers, metal detectors, even dogs trained to sniff out firearms. The idea that the gun might be buried 100 miles away shows how far the killers might have gone to hide evidence. Unfortunately, the search ended with no gun found. Perhaps the weapon had been moved or the tip was off target. Still, the effort sends a clear message. Police have not forgotten Euan Johnston. Time is no barrier for justice, Detective Superintendent Peter Sharp said, stressing that they believe multiple people were involved in the murder and that they will not stop hunting them. Now, if you took something from this video, you might also enjoy the video on screen now, where I showcase 17 evil killers who were convicted for their crimes in September 2025. And as always, thank you for watching. And I'll see you again in the next one, when it'll once again be time for more true crime.